Hello there and welcome to ARIRANG News. It's Friday, December 5th. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. Washington's top nuclear envoy Sung Kim is in Seoul for talks with his South Korean counterpart Hwang Joon-kook. Now, much of the talk is focused on North Korea and its nuclear program, of course. Our Lee Ji-yoon has more on what Kim said about the long-stalled six-party nuclear talks.
Washington is not lowering the bar for restarting nuclear talks. U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Policy Sung Kim says the fate of the stalled six-party talks depends on Pyongyang.
It would be a mistake for us to rush back to negotiations unless we can have some confidence that the North Koreans are ready to work with us in a sincere and serious manner towards complete verifiable denuclearization.
The former U.S. ambassador to South Korea met with his South Korean counterpart Hwang Joon-kook on Friday in Seoul. There, Kim said the U.S. wants to resume negotiations and that its diplomatic doors are open to North Korea, but that the North has refused to walk through them. The meeting between the nuclear envoys from Seoul and Washington follows a visit by North Korean Special Envoy Choi Ryong-hae to Russia last month. There, Choi reportedly said Pyongyang was ready to resume the talks on its nuclear program without preconditions. Next week, Kim will travel to Japan and China, both participants of the six-party talks, to discuss the North Korean issue once again. Lee Ji-yoon, ARIRANG News.
A college professor in Seoul was recently detained on charges of sexually assaulting dozens of his students over the years. There are also allegations that the head of the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra sexually harassed her employees. Now, it's developments like these that have left the police no choice but to roll up their sleeves. Connie Lee has our story.
It's being seen as a new push in the fight against sexual abuse here in Korea. The National Police Agency has announced that a special division will be set up next year solely dedicated to investigating sexual abuse allegations. The agency says it wants to reduce the number of cases here in the nation and strengthen investigations into victims' reports. This announcement comes amid a recent string of sexual abuse and harassment cases involving some high-profile men. Just this past Wednesday, a professor at Seoul National University was detained on charges of sexually harassing his intern. A professor at Korea University, another prestigious school, recently resigned after accusations he sexually abused a student. And a former prosecutor general is also under the spotlight for allegedly molesting a female employee at a country club. It's merely a small sample size, as many cases are believed to go unreported.
The victims this time were brave enough to stand up against these powerful men. The media attention on this is positive and hopefully signals a change in how Korea deals with sexual abuse, especially involving high-profile people.
The National Police Agency's latest plan shows its determination to combat sexual abuse. Earlier this year, the agency set up a special task force in well over 100 regions throughout Korea to investigate sexual abuse cases. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Along with building a creative economy, one of President Park Geun-hye's key drives has been peacefully reunifying the two Koreas. Although not everyone agrees with the president, 7 out of 10 South Koreans apparently support reunification. Kim Min-ji has more.
Unification of the two Koreas would be a bonanza. Words spoken by the South Korean president. But what do the average South Koreans think? Believe it or not, 7 in 10 people say we need unification. This according to a survey by the Seoul-based Korea Institute for National Unification on 1,000 people nationwide. Then why do they think unification is needed? Nearly 40% of respondents said it was because North and South Koreans belong to the same race. Eliminating the threat of war came in second, followed by reuniting families separated by the Korean War and becoming an advanced nation. While not many South Koreans see unification as a benefit to themselves as an individual, they believe that it would be a boon for the country as a whole. If and when the two Koreas do become one, the respondents said their top agenda should be working to achieve greater economic growth. Experts say the GDP of a unified Korea could reach $70,000 by 2050, the second highest among G20 nations. While the report shows public sentiment is largely behind unification, many South Koreans were still apprehensive when it came to the idea of moving to the north for work or marriage, indicating there is still a way to go before they feel totally comfortable about their northern neighbors. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
And experts say if and when the two Koreas become one again, there will be a mass migration of North Koreans coming to the south. Participants at the first Korea-Germany Unification Policy Seminar held in Seoul say the number will hover around 1.8 million, which is about 8% of the current North Korean population. In the case of Germany, following its reunification in 1990, some 400,000 East Germans emigrated west, which was about 2.5% of the East German population back then. Now, participants at the event agreed that South Korea needed to begin putting policies and programs in place now to be better prepared. And if not for anything else, many would agree that reunification is necessary to stop inter-Korean aggressions. One I can think of is the sinking or the fatal sinking of the South Korean warship Cheonan by North Korea in 2010. Next March will mark the 5th anniversary, and the vessel has actually been moved to be used for educational purposes. Choi Yoo-sun reports.
Inside a park at the South Korean Navy 2nd Fleet headquarters south of Seoul now stands what remains of the Cheonan warship, which was torpedoed by North Korea nearly 5 years ago. A $6 million project has placed the 1,200-ton vessel here from a nearby dock to show the very appearance of the Cheonan, cut into two pieces after the attack on March 26, 2010, which claimed the lives of 46 South Korean sailors. Visitors can get a wider view of the area atop a 4-story high observatory and listen to the details of the tragedy before paying tribute to the sailors in front of a monument.
The exhibition will become a site of protecting our country, where a will for a victorious fight will be imprinted in the officers, and people will be reminded about the value of security.
In a bid to turn the painful memory into an opportunity to educate people about security, officials plan to build an additional memorial hall next year.
I was heartbroken when we had to say goodbye to our children, but I'm thankful that the government has made efforts not to forget them.
Some 830,000 Koreans and foreigners have visited the Cheonan since it was displayed at the fleet's dock soon after the attack. Now the story of the ill-fated vessel can be told to more visitors at its new home. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
Starting next year, Ikea will stop selling a world map that refers to the body of water between Korea and Japan only by the Japanese name. Ahead of the opening of its first store in Korea this month, Swedish furniture giant says it has decided to leave the map off its global product lineup. The map, which caused quite a stir here in Korea, refers to the sea as the Sea of Japan and doesn't include the Korean name East Sea. The company explained the map was not intended to be used as an educational tool and apologized to those who might have been offended. Most patent battles between the world's top two tech giants have been dropped everywhere, that is, except for the U.S. Samsung says the almost $1 billion fine it has been ordered to pay is too much and is asking an appeals court to reverse the decision. Shin Se-min reports.
Samsung Electronics wants a U.S. appeals court to throw out an earlier court's order that it pay Apple $930 million for infringing on iPhone patents when it made its Galaxy range of smart devices. Stressing the design and the look of the company's devices are different from iPhones, Samsung's lawyer Caitlin Sullivan said the damages award was excessive and unwarranted. Making the Korean company's case at the U.S. District Court in California on Thursday, Sullivan said the lower court was wrong to decide Apple's design patents were infringed upon because the Samsung devices do not carry an Apple logo, do not have a home button, and the speaker spots are in different places. She said it was absurd to make Samsung pay Apple its total profit for the Galaxy devices, likening it to giving back the entire profits on a car just because it infringed another automaker's cup holder. Apple's attorney, William Lee, dismissed Samsung's argument and said the $930 million award was fair. Reports say the three judges did not indicate when they would reach their decision. The massive award to Apple is the largest set in any of the so-called smartphone wars. The patent lawsuit between Apple and Samsung began back in 2007 and has rumbled on for years. Samsung and Apple agreed in the summer to drop their patent litigation outside of the U.S., though they have yet to settle their broader dispute. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
The Japanese yen has dropped to a new low, dropping to the psychologically important 120 mark against the greenback for the first time in more than 7 years. The yen tumbled to as low as 120.25 before pulling it back a little up to close at 119.78 in New York on Thursday. It also fell 0.7% against the euro on Thursday. The Japanese currency has been on a downward spiral for months, especially since the Bank of Japan announced new stimulus measures to boost the economy in October. So far this year, the yen has fallen over 13% against the dollar. Toyota Motor Corporation has said it will call back 190,000 more cars to replace potentially defective airbags made by Takara, though the maker has so far resisted a nationwide recall called by a U.S. safety agency. Now, some 14 million vehicles of 10 different brands, including Ford, Honda, and Toyota, have been recalled worldwide, with exploding driver's side airbags attributing to 5 deaths and about 140 injuries so far. 8 million of those cars are in the U.S., and Mazda now says the company will expand the recall to additional states as well. Calling it an unprecedented crisis, Japan's regulator reportedly said it may need to change its recall system for an improved response. And back here in the nation, in the process of reforming the Korean economy and reducing its heavy dependence on exports, the Korean government has been stressing the importance of foreign investment, and one of the things it is doing to lure more of those investments is promoting its free economic zones. Our Song Ji-sun has more on this report.
To attract more foreign direct investment, Korea has established 8 free economic zones over the past dozen years, with their total area amounting to 330 square kilometers, or half the size of Singapore. This one in Incheon was the first to be set up in 2003 and is the biggest of the 8. Foreign investors can receive tax exemptions and incentives when setting up their businesses in these free economic zones. BMW is one of many enjoying the benefits since building its first driving center in Asia at Incheon.
It took years to choose the location through multiple feasibility tests, and we are fully satisfied with our decision. It's close to the capital and the metropolitan area. It's close to the airport, which enables us to provide maintenance service when our clients fly out.
Korea seeks to become the center of East Asia in terms of investment by attracting more FDI in the 8 free economic zones. But further deregulation is needed to fight rising competition within the region, as China and Taiwan also launched similar free trade zones last year.
FDI coming into Korea, if you go back to 2003, it's gone up by about a factor of 3. So it's good progress, roughly on a par with other countries in Asia, but good, solid progress. The competition is there, though. I mean, I think that's key. Korea is not alone in doing this.
The researcher also points out that inefficiencies in labor and financial markets are slowing things down, while Korea's infrastructure and high level of education stand out as advantages compared to its global competitors. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
Mostly peaceful but massive protests are growing in the U.S. over the latest grand jury decision in New York not to press charges against a white police officer who ended up killing an unarmed black man through a chokehold. New York's Mayor Bill de Blasio says policing has to change. Have a listen.
People need to know that black lives and brown lives matter as much as white lives. What we still have to aspire to.
Now, in light of this incident, NYPD Police Commissioner William Bratton says a 3-day program will start this month, during which some 22,000 officers will undergo training on street tactics, such as presenting a non-judgmental posture, in addition to the usual firearms training. The protests in New York are reigniting the controversy and divide between police and the African-American community, as it comes only a couple of weeks after the situation in Ferguson, Missouri, calmed a bit over the Michael Brown case. Earlier, from Washington, President Barack Obama said, quote, "Too many Americans feel deep unfairness when it comes to the gap between professional ideals and how laws are applied on a day-to-day basis." Now, many were looking forward to Thursday's launch of the Orion space shuttle in the U.S., NASA's first spacecraft in more than a generation. But gusty winds, followed by technical problems, have forced officials to postpone the launch by a day. Kim Ji-yoon has more.
The launch of the Orion space capsule from Cape Canaveral in the U.S. state of Florida was called off just 4 minutes before scheduled takeoff due to technical problems. They were detected in the batteries of the rocket's camera and the valves of the shuttle's water supply. A spokesperson for NASA told AFP that it tried for several hours to fix the problems, but were unable to, forcing the launch to be postponed until Friday morning. The launch of Orion is highly anticipated by the space community. It would mark the first time in more than 40 years that NASA has launched a craft designed to carry astronauts deep into space. Orion is planned to fly an altitude of 5,800 kilometers, circle the Earth's orbit 2 times in 4.5 hours, and land near waters of Baja California, west of Mexico. Through the test run, NASA will carry out a number of measurements that will be crucial in scheduling a manned spaceflight in the future. A crowd of 26,000 people gathered at the Kennedy Space Center to watch the Orion launch and left disappointed about the delay, but they will get another shot to see history again in the coming hours. Kim Ji-yoon, ARIRANG News.
An American hostage held by Al-Qaeda's affiliate in Yemen says his life is in danger. The militant group has denounced what it calls American crimes against the Muslim world and has threatened to kill the hostage by the end of this week if their demands are not met. Son Jung-in has this report.
In a 3-minute video posted by Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula on Thursday, the terror group's leader threatened to kill an American hostage, claiming the U.S. had committed crimes against the Muslim world. Nasser bin Ali Al-Lansi gave the U.S. 3 days to meet unspecified demands that he said Washington was aware of.
We give the American government a time frame of 3 days from the issuance of this statement to meet our demands, about which they are aware. Otherwise, the American hostage held by us will meet his inevitable fate.
Soon after the statement, Luke Summers, a British-born American, appears in the footage, pleading for the U.S. government to save his life. The 33-year-old photojournalist was kidnapped last September in the Yemeni capital Sana'a while working for the Yemen Times.
My name is Luke Summers. It's now been well over a year since I was kidnapped in Sana'a. Basically, I'm looking for any help that can get me out of this situation. I'm certain that my life is in danger.
The threat comes more than a week after a rescue attempt by the United States Yemeni mission freed 8 hostages kidnapped by Al-Qaeda's Yemen branch. During the joint operation, however, the military is known to have failed to locate other 5 hostages, including Mr. Summers. 손정인, 아리랑 뉴스.
We may not feel the difference in our everyday lives, but the fact of the matter is that global temperatures are rising. So what can and should be done to mitigate the impact of climate change? Well, that's the very question being tackled at UN climate talks in Peru. Our Kwon So-ah reports.
November 2013. Typhoon Haiyan slams into the Philippines, killing more than 6,000 people and turning the lives of millions of others upside down. Now, another super typhoon is bringing back memories of last year's nightmare. Typhoon Ruby is forecast to make landfall within the next 2 days. It's superstorms like Ruby that are sounding alarm bells worldwide about the effects of climate change. It is a major topic of conversation at UN climate negotiations in Peru.
When we were in Doha, it was Typhoon Bhopal. When we were in Warsaw, it was Typhoon Haiyan. And now that we are here in Lima, we are facing Typhoon Ruby, which is also a Category 4 super typhoon. We need you to get your acts together to meaningfully respond to the urgency of climate action.
Many experts agree that global warming intensifies extreme weather events. That's why the biggest major climate conference this year aims to set a long-term treaty to keep global temperatures from rising more than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. It's part of the global push to reduce carbon emissions, with extra pressure being exerted on the world's 2 worst polluters, China and the United States. At the UN General Assembly Thursday, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon welcomed new pledges out of Beijing, Washington, and the EU, including Germany, to cut emissions.
Next year is an opportunity to take big steps, transformative steps in the right direction. We must do all it takes to provide hope for people and the planet.
Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
By now, everyone can agree with me that it's freezing cold here in Seoul and all across the nation. I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Our frigid morning froze and even burst water pipes in some regions. The roads are icy as well and slippery, so be careful out there. And a cold wave alert now remains in effect for the Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, and Chungcheongbuk-do provinces, while a heavy snowfall alert have been issued for the west coast of Chungcheongnam-do and Jeollabuk-do provinces, where up to 7 centimeters are expected through until tomorrow morning. Now, our daytime highs are hovering right around the freezing point, but the reality is that it feels colder due to the winds, which makes it feel more like minus 20 degrees here in the capital today. And these cold conditions will stick around through the weekend. However, the skies will be mostly clear and sunny nationwide. Now going over to our readings for today. Seoul will peak to minus 2 degrees this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will top higher at 1 and 5 degrees. And moving over to other regions such as Jeju will peak to 7, Dokdo hits 1, while Nakhon can be a bit lower at -10. Well, that's all for now. Michelle Park, now here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's a wrap from me at this hour. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with more updates in about 90 minutes time at 6 p.m. Korea time.